Over to the grain markets now. The grain complex continues to show strong momentum. Supporting prices are a variety of factors, including the drying South American forecast. On Wednesday, USDA released its February crop production and World Agricultural Supply Demand Estimates reports. Shortly after the reports were released, we had the chance to visit with Jeff Peterson. He's the president of Heartland Farm Partners. We began that conversation with Jeff by asking him about the most important numbers from those reports.
Yeah, I think probably the most important numbers, first of all, started taking a look, at what South American production was doing, and probably more importantly on Brazil and Argentina. And then we also had to keep a very close eye on how did those ending stock numbers end up, in the U.S. So those were the most important numbers that we were really watching.
So what did you find in this month's report, Jeff?
Probably about as we expected. We knew USDA would bring numbers down, but we really didn't think they'd probably bring them down as much as what the trade was expecting. So you start off on Brazil, and we know within Brazil there's some really good yields in places, but the crop has been hurt in southern Brazil. Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, they've all been hurt. They were just too dry, and that was reflected in the numbers. They came in at 114 million on the corn side, on the Brazilian corn number. That was slightly higher than what the Dow Jones estimate was looking for. They were looking for a 113, but something we got to keep in mind on the corn side is that last year that ended up being 87. So it looks like we're still going to have quite a bit more corn than we did a year ago. Main reason for that, though, Bryce, is the fact that these type of weather conditions are impacting that first crop, and that first crop only makes up about 25% of what their overall production. Too early to tell what that safrinha crop is going to be. And then you move over to the beans and you come in at a 134 million metric tons. Dow Jones was looking for 133, so just slightly higher. But what we have to think about is last year. Last year was a 138, so we are starting to bring the numbers down below ultimately where we would have been last year. Argentina, the numbers, it's probably a little bit too early to give them a lot of attention yet, but they came in just a little bit higher than what the trade was expecting. But something I want us to think about as we look overall at that production down in South America. Overall, when we compare the whole area, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, to basically a year ago, and we include the rest of that producing area there, from where the expectation was where they were going to be, they're down almost 900 million bushels is what the trade thinks. So as we go further down the road, I think we are going to see some additional reductions on that South American production numbers.
Still on that WASDE released on Wednesday, what did we learn about the U.S. crop?
It was really interesting on the U.S. side. So, January had just kind of a data dump, right? We had production numbers, quarterly stocks. Really kind of the focus then, since we got production out of the way now, and this February report was really all kind of about what demand was. And really over on the corn side, there was no adjustments, 1.54 billion bushels. Trade was looking for about 1.515, but we got to keep in mind that's exactly where the January report was. Now, we did go ahead and bring down the numbers slightly as we were looking at the soybeans ending stocks out of the U.S. That came in at 325, so that was compared to 350 million bushels in the last report. Trade was looking for about 314, so slightly higher there also. And what we ended up seeing there is they made the adjustment on the crush side. So, and we thought they probably could adjust the crush higher. I mean, as we dig into the monthly numbers, we would say that basically where we're tracking would support that we probably need to see a bigger crush yet down the road. What we took a look at, though, is at what's happening on that meal demand, side. So what are they doing with the extra meal that's being produced? And that actually was hitting the export side. So didn't raise the domestic usage, went right to exports, which be interesting to watch down the road, because if Argentina's numbers continue to go lower, they're the #1 exporter of soybean meal and soybean oil. That could be optimistic for some additional crush increases down the road. As we go down the road here in the U.S., we also do think we should see some increases on the export side on both the corn and the soybean side, and a lot of that's going to be because we're going to end up having less production coming out of South America, so we shouldn't have as much competition as what we would have had the past year.
Jeff, as you and I had this conversation on Wednesday afternoon looking at the close to settlements, March corn, we're sitting about $6.50, soybeans knocking on $16 a bushel. What's going on in these markets? You and I were talking, this is kind of craziness out there when you look at these numbers, right?
Yeah, it really is, and it's really what the market's doing, and the market's doing exactly what it always does. It's looking down the road. If we were to take our current stocks to use ratios, Bryce, they don't support where these numbers are at. But what we know is the trade is expecting basically some smaller ending stock numbers in the U.S. and the world as we go down the road. And if you really take a big picture view and say, okay, really, what's going on out there? Well, we've got a supply problem in South America, okay? In addition to that, there's also a surprise on the world veg oil side when Indonesia ended up saying, you know what, we're not quite sure yet how much we're going to end up exporting. We're going to keep some more of that palm oil for our domestic use, try to cool those prices down. But then the other side of that we have is we've got the whole demand side out there, and you got the renewable diesel that we've talked a little bit about, and there's more plants come online there. And then also we're hearing about more crush capacity being built in Nebraska and also some other states. And so you've got all that come together to kind of surprise you from the demand side, and you bring that all together, the market's saying, you know what, we're not quite done here yet. And I don't think the market's done yet. I don't think we've seen the highs on old crop or new crop yet, Bryce.